prevention, suicide intervention, and also suicide postvention, which and the webinars will be conducted weekly starting from today and then next Friday and the Friday after next. So each webinar will focus on different aspects of suicide awareness, and for today's webinar in particular, we will be looking at the prevention of suicide. Okay, so before we begin, I would just like to note that the topic of suicide is a very heavy and very sensitive topic. So if at any point throughout the session you feel overwhelmed or triggered by any of the topics that are discussed today, please feel free to leave the webinar and come back to join us whenever you are ready to do so. Alternatively, you can also practice some deep breathing, relaxing exercises to calm any thoughts or feelings that you may be having. And if you need to reach out, you can feel free to contact any mental health hotlines such as Befrienders or Wellness Hotline. And our technician will leave the hotline contacts in the chat box for your reference. So with that being said, today we will be talking about the prevention of suicide, instilling compassion and how you can do your part to help and support those who are going through a difficult time or having suicidal thoughts, whether that person is yourself or your loved ones. So here's the content of what we will be talking about today. So we will be starting off with an introduction to suicide prevention by Wanda Najiha, followed by recognizing the warning signs and the risk by Farida Hamimi, and instilling compassion by myself, Sophia Atika. We will also be having a short activity at the end of the sharing, and we will conclude our webinar today with a short Q&A series. And so without further ado, I would like to invite the first speaker, Najiha, to start off today's webinar.
Okay, thank you, Sophia. So before I started to sharing my part, I would like to invite all of you to play a game. Okay, let's play a game about suicide. So let's start out. Let's test our knowledge and learn about suicide. I would like to know your perspective on suicide, so everybody can scan the QR code here. Okay, once you already scan. Okay, or you can also click the link in the chat box below. Okay, once all of you have already scanned, you need to enter the code. So my friend will share the code. Let's wait for a while. Okay, the code here is 589729. Okay, I repeat once again, 589729. So the game code will be pasted in the chat box below. Okay, let's wait for a while for our friends to join the game. So let's wait for a while. It's already been 8 people so far. We'll give some space for the others to join the quiz. For those who have yet to scan the QR code just now, you can click the link in the chat box below to join the game. Okay, let's give for a few more minutes for our friends to join the game. So far, there are already 14 people joining the game. Okay, let's wait for another 1 minute. Okay, so we can start our game now. So the first question is, suicide is the leading cause of death among young people worldwide. So all of you guys can choose either it is true or false. Yeah, it seems like 13 people got it right, and there are 2 got it false, but that's okay. Now you know the correct answer. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Okay, you can take your time to answer this one. It seems like most of the people got it right. Okay. Next. So you can vote your answer now. Is it true or false? Oh, it looks like there are 16 people here got it right, and there's only one person who voted true, but that's okay. We are still in the learning process, and now you know the correct answer of it. Let's move on to the last question. it seems like YB is already at the first place. Now, I think like we have another one last question. Okay, so let's move towards the last question. Let's vote. What is the correct one? Either it is true or false. Okay, time's up. Yeah, oh, it seems like everyone got it right. Okay. Actually, talking about suicide will help us raise awareness of the severity of the issue and help us towards suicide prevention. Okay, we can moving on to the slides. So, suicide is a serious public health problem that can negatively affect individuals, families, and communities. During this sharing session, we will share many factors that contribute to the suicide after this. So the goal of suicide prevention is to reduce factors that can increase risk and increase factors that promote resilience, compassion in ourselves and others. So actually, since in the quiz given earlier, there is a question on whether suicide is equal to self-harm. So I will explain briefly the difference between self-harm and suicide. So let's take a look on the slide here. So self-harm is actually usually associated with exposure to negative life events, and self-harm often refers to deliberate, direct destruction of body tissue that result in tissue damage. However, the person who actually committing suicide, the person who actually doing self-harm, their intention is actually not to kill themselves, but to turn the psychological pain, which is, for example, the frustration, into physical pain, which they can feel a sense of control and relief. So some people describe self-harm as the way of expressing themselves, um, or expressing something that hard to put into words, which is or turning something invisible thoughts or feelings into something visible, or also they are actually wanted to express their opinion. They are changing emotional pain into physical pain and reducing overwhelming emotional feelings or thoughts. So there are actually a few ways of doing self-harm. For example, cutting, beating, picking or scratching at skins, and hitting yourself on walls. So as for the suicide, suicide is someone when is that's caused by injuring oneself with the intent to end one's life. So if all of you can see at the bottom here, the red color font, this is what I found from the person who actually doing self harm. The person stated that I think one of my biggest barriers to getting help was actually not admitting to myself that I had a problem. I used to tell myself I'm only scratching. It's not a real self-harm. So actually you can see that the person is in denial, knowing that I'm only in the scratching, but scratching is also categorized one of the ways of doing self-harm. So let's move to another page. Okay, so this is a finding based on research on suicidology. There are three stages here. Actually, it is not necessarily someone who has suicidal ideation will end up committing suicide. But for someone who's already ended up their life, this is the phase that they already face. So the first stage is suicidal ideation, which is often called suicidal thoughts or ideas. It is a broad term used to describe a range of contemplation, um, wishes, and preoccupation with death and suicide. And for suicidal ideation, there are 10 to 15% of any population who have these suicidal thoughts. So, from the suicidal ideation, the person might or might not be moving on to the suicide attempt. So, let's see, the suicide attempt here is when someone harms themselves with any intent to end their life, but they do not die as a result of their action. So, from there are 20 to 25% of ideators, which is referring to the person, the first stage, which is the persons having the suicidal ideation. There are 20 to 25% who actually doing the suicide attempt, and female is 4 times likely to suicide attempt. So the last stage is suicide contemplation completion. So suicide completion is referring to someone who is already end up their life, which is consisting of 15 to 20% of attempters, and male is 4 times more likely to complete. So you can see here that from the first stage, suicidal ideation, moving on to the suicide attempt, and the last one is ended up their life. So where are we in during today's session and today sharing? We are at before the stage of suicidal ideation. We are going to prevent the suicidal ideation from become worse. So next, so let's take a look on the statistic of suicide worldwide. Okay, first, so according to World Health Organization, there are more than 700,000 people die to suicide every year, and prior to suicide attempt is the most important risk factor, the suicide for in the general population. So it is also reported that suicide is the fourth leading cause of death among 15 to 19 years old. You can see that the issue is someone who is in their teenage phase. So and there are 77% of global suicide occurs in low and middle income countries. And some of the ways of committing suicide is ingestion of pesticides, hanging, and firearms. This is the ways of the most common methods in doing suicide. So there are also example here, which is the leading cause of death in US. It is suicide, one of it, and there are 1.2 million American attempt suicide. And as for China, you can see the Australia. Okay, so we have done for the worldwide. Let's take a look on the statistic in Malaysia. So you can see here, actually there is a lack of comprehensive quality data and prevalence of suicide in Malaysia. So usually in Malaysia, the statistics are likely to underestimate the true rate of suicide, as suicide is also classified as underdetermined. And you can see here in 2019, the rate of suicide is 5.8 per 100,000 population, with an estimated 1,841 suicide deaths, which is estimately 5 deaths per day. And so, Malaysia also has been recorded as the second highest among selected Muslim majority countries in the middle range Asian countries. So there is in 2019. Let's take a look on 2020. So according to Ministry of Health, there were 465 suicide attempt cases received treatment in hospital from January to June. So this is during PKP, which is in the early of MCO, Movement Control Order, which is in 18 March 2020 till 10 October 2020, which is there are a total of 266 people have died by suicide. So you can see that during PKP, the rate is starting to increase. And in 2021, the recent year is just the previous year. The first 5 months, there are 468 suicide cases has been reported, and Selangor is the highest number of cases that already committing suicide. So next, this is the example that I got from the news. There's a lot more, but you can see that dua rakyat Malaysia bunuh diri, 465 kes cubaan bunuh diri, pelajar kolej gantung diri. So there's a lot on news referring to suicide. Okay, next. So before I ended my sharing session, so this is the quote that I quoted from someone who wanted to commit suicide. The person stated that the previous thing I ever did was continuing my life when I wanted to die. So shout out to this person. It seems like the person is still intended to continue their life, even though there's a lot of motivation to do that. And the person must also proud of herself and love their self. Okay, so let's move on to the next speaker.
Okay. Thank you, Najiha, for your sharing about the introduction to suicide prevention. So as Najiha has shared, suicide is a very real and very serious public health issue, both worldwide and in Malaysia. And as you also know, the first step towards prevention is awareness. So we have to be aware that this is an issue instead of just sweeping it under the rug. And so now that we are slowly becoming aware of the severity of this issue, how do we identify the warning signs of suicide? What are some of the risk factors for suicide, and what are some of the protective factors that can help prevent a person from committing suicide? So all these questions will be answered by our next speaker, Farida Hamimi. Hamimi, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Sophia, for moderating the session. So, as shared earlier by Najiha, suicide is a serious problem in Malaysia and all around the world. The statistics that were shown before are the one involved reported cases. So what about the unreported cases? More likely than not, there are more numbers that needed to be added in the statistic. Thus, in honoring our theme for today, which is suicide prevention, efforts need to be done to reduce the increasing number of suicide cases. So in order to prevent, we first need to be able to recognize the warning signs, the individual who are at risk, the risk factor that increase the likelihood of committing suicide, and also the protective factor that protect individual against it. So before we start, I would like to know, what do you know about warning sign? Okay, so in the next slide, you can see on the screen as the QR code to enter the Mentimeter. So you can either scan the code or copy the link given in the chat box. So you can try to scan the code first. Okay, or you can also copy the link that was given by our technician in the chat box. Okay, let's wait for the Mentimeter to work. Okay, So upon entering the link, you will see one question, which is, which of the following is the warning signs of suicide for suicide? So you can also, there is also 7 options to choose from. So you can choose more than one answer for the following warning sign that you think might be associated with suicide. So let's allow some of our friends to enter the link and try to answer the question first. Okay, we have already 19 participants that participate. So we invite more participants to involve in this activity, short activity session. Okay, is there any other people who like to join this activity? You can try to copy the link in the chat box. And straight away you will be answering the question. So let's wait for a few more minutes for other people to join us. Okay, there are some of the responses that we can see on the screen, but in the form of the pie chart. Okay, is there anyone else that would like to join? All right, maybe we can try to enter to show the correct answer. Sophia, maybe you can try to click the enter. Okay, so we can see on the screen, from all the 7 options that were given there are 4 correct answers that shows a warning sign for suicide. So the first one would be, they might be talking about wanting to die. They might be talking about being a burden to others, and they might also do suicide note and also commit to or attempt self-harm behavior. So which are not, the warning signs are crying. So crying doesn't really indicate one sign for suicide, but rather it is an express of emotion from in the form of crying. And the other one would be the one that are not a warning sign is seeking help, seeking professional help and taking care of themselves. So thank you so much for your participation. So I hope you now know what are some of the warning signs of suicide. So let's come to the main screen. Okay. Okay, so I hope most of you got it correct, and I'm glad to know that most of you have the idea of what our topic would be for today. But to add more on the warning sign, let me share you some of warning sign in my slide. So as seen here, I divide this sign into 3 dimensions, which is talk, feels, and action. The possible warning sign that can be seen in an individual is the way they talk. If they mention talk about wanting to die or killing themselves, they may be at risk. And they also may express being a burden to others. For example, statement like, I am just a burden in my family, or if I die, they would be much happier, and etc. So this is some of the examples that may indicate verbal communication of warning sign of suicide. So other than that, they may also mention feeling trapped in an endless cycle of having unbearable pain and having no purpose in life also serve as a warning sign to detect individuals who have the ideation or intention to commit suicide. And in terms of feeling, the major feeling that are frequently felt by people who wanted to commit suicide are hopelessness, helplessness, and worthlessness. So in differentiating these 3 feelings, hopeless can be seen as there is no point of living, whereas helplessness refers to inability to do anything or to come out of a difficult situation. And worthlessness, on the other hand, refers to the state of being unimportant or useless. And another warning sign that can be seen might be they may appear to be tearful and overwhelmed by negative thoughts. And finally, if you can see someone who are used to being depressed or moody at all time, and suddenly if they show sudden calmness, you need to be sure, or you need to ask them why are the sudden calmness suddenly come to them, to ensure that this is not the warning sign of them wanting to commit suicide. And let's move to the action part. And as for the action or behavior part, the warning sign can be seen among those who search for method to commit suicide. For example, they might search what are the easiest way to commit suicide, or what are the fastest way to die, and stuff like that. And they may also start to share stories and posts on suicidality, like what the question just now. Sharing on social media might also indicate they are trying for help or they wanted help, and one of the warning signs of committing suicide. And those who have drastic change in their personality, appearances, sleep, and eating pattern also may be a warning sign of them having thoughts of committing suicide. And if someone appears to saying goodbyes out of sudden as if they will never come back again, you also might need to check on them whether or not they are saying goodbye for girls. And sometimes for the people who wanted to commit suicide, they may mask their intention to commit suicide by involving in risky and self-destructing behavior, such as cutting their arms and stuff that may be destructive to their life. Okay, so what we have discussed in this slide are some of the common signs that can be observed within the individual who wanted to commit suicide. However, we also need to consider those who silently struggling, those who are not expressive in nature, and those who hide their pain by smiling even wider. And for these people, what we can do the least is to practice kindness and compassion. So this is one of my favorite quotes. Everyone is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind always. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so next we will see what are some of the risk factors that may increase the likelihood of an individual to commit suicide. So in this risk factor, I divided the factors into 3 levels, which is individual risk factor, relationship risk factor, and community, cultural, and societal risk factor. So in individual risk factor, someone who have previously attempted suicide have higher chances of repeating the action again in the future. And someone who have history of mental illnesses such as depression, anxiety, OCD, personality disorders, and many more may also have higher chances of committing suicide. But we are not saying that everyone with mental disorders are prone to commit suicide, but they might somehow increases the chance of them wanting to commit suicide. And similarly for the physical pain, someone who has long-term pain or terminally ill might think, why must they suffer with the pain if at the end of the day they can't even heal? So they might think that death or suicide would be one of the options. Other than that, factors such as job loss or financial issues and having violent or impulsive behavior also are some of the risk factors that may increase the individual's vulnerability towards suicide. And next, let's see on the relationship risk factor. History of physical, emotional or sexual abuse, neglect or bullying might also increases the risk for the individual to commit suicide. And having a history of suicide in the family or witnessing a loved one committing suicide also might increase the person's vulnerability towards committing suicide. And other than that, relationship impairment or loss such as breakups, divorce, and death may also triggers a person into think that there is nothing else they can expect in this world and chooses suicide as a method to cope with their sufferings and grief. And the last factors for the relationship would be to be socially isolated. So if a person is socially isolated, might be one of the risk factors, or it increases the risk to commit suicide because they will feel that they lack of support and human touch. So in society, culture, and societal risk factor, stigma associated with help seeking and mental illness may prevent a person or individual from seeking help and thus increasing the risk of committing suicide. And lack of access to healthcare also may have the same result as the stigma that we have mentioned just now, and easy access to lethal mean, for example, weapon, on the counter medication, which is non-prescribed medication, or tall building may also increases the risk for the person to commit suicide. And last but not least, the unsafe media portrayals of suicide. So as we know, mental health literacy in Malaysia now have tremendously increased, especially after the COVID-19 and so on. And from this, we have seen a lot of portrayals of mental disorders and stuff. However, if we did not practice safe media portrayals, rather than become advocates of mental illness, it may possess as a threat and triggers the vulnerable people to wanting to commit suicide. So we have seen what are some of the risk factors associated with committing suicide. So let's switch into what are some of the protective factors which may protect the individual from committing suicide. And again, I have divided the factors into 3 levels: individual, relationship, community, cultural, and societal protective factor. So in individual protective factor, given all the risk factors that may be happening to them, how would they help themselves? So adopting an effective coping and problem-solving skill might help a person to think of the issues and the problem that they need to solve, rather than the one they wanted to think of as a medium to die. So another factor would be having reason to live. So as we have shared in previous slide, having no reason to live increases the risk factor for them to commit suicide. So having great reason to live might lower this probability of committing suicide. So this reason can be coming from the commitment from the family, friends, and even pet, but the best reason to live is to live for yourself. Okay, next we move to the relationship protective factor. So the individual who are at risk needed to feel connected to others. So to feel connected, they might need support from partners, families, and friends. So this support doesn't necessarily always social support. It can be emotional support, it can be financial support, or any other support that might bring comfort to the individuals. And in community, cultural, and societal protective factor, the availability of healthcare may reduce the risk of them committing suicide, as they can get help from the healthcare center. And we need to also reduce the access to lethal mean of suicide among people at risk. And last but not least, cultural, religious, or moral objection to suicide. So religion is one of our biggest support or protective factor that can protect a person from committing suicide. Next slide. So as we know, Malaysia have a diversity of races, ethnic, and even religion practice. So let's see what are some of the religious perspective regarding suicide. So in Buddhism, we can see that Buddhism refrain from the destruction of life, including oneself, and suicide is also seen as a negative act. And in Christianity, the Orthodox Church normally denies a Christian burial to a person who has died by suicide. And in Hinduism, suicide is spiritually unacceptable, and murdering one's own body is considered equally sinful as murdering others. And Islam, in Quran, ayah 4 and Surah 4 and Ayah 29, and do not kill yourself, surely God is more merciful to you. So this is some of the perspective that I get from the internet, but in honoring our friends who are from different religion, I am so sorry if this is not what the perspective that might be from the in regard to suicide. So next slide. So specifically in Islam and suicide, Islam prohibits people from killing themselves. Islam also has given an emphasis and importance on respecting the soul and consider it as precious and valued. Since it is one of the blessed human beings were bestowed with, they were ordered by the Almighty to preserve and protect it. So from this statement, we can see that Muslims are forbidden from any means of violating the soul by keeping it alive and avoiding killing oneself or even others. And since the soul is given by God as a mana, we need to protect the soul and the trust that were given to us. So what we can see from the ayah just now is that preserving one life is one of the obligations that we needed to do as a Muslim. And rather than thinking into Islam does not care for human suffering or for any mental disorder that might actually causing distress to them, we need to think that all life are precious, and that is why this obligation surface in order to recognize that every life of the people are precious, no matter who you are, whatever job you work in, you are precious. So we need to protect the life at all costs. So we can see also the prevention of we can also see the obligation as the prevention of suicide from the Islamic perspective. So this would be all from my section. So in this section, we have learned what are some of the warning signs that are associated with people who are at risk for committing suicide. What are some of the risk factor and protective factor against suicide? And what are some of the religion perspective regarding suicide and also Islam and suicide. So we hope by recognizing this sign and risk factor, we will be able to help those who are struggling and needs our help. With that, thank you.
Thank you, Hamimi, for sharing with us about the potential warning signs, risk factors, protective factors, and even the religious perspective of suicide. So I think it's really important for us to know all of this so that we can approach the topic of suicide in a more respectful and a more compassionate and understanding manner. So now we move on to our next section, which will be presented by myself. So for today, I will be talking about instilling compassion, how to help and support. So actually, while we were planning for this webinar, yes, we wanted to talk about suicide and we wanted to share about how to help. But more importantly, we wanted to open a conversation about this topic, which is so commonly seen as a taboo and something that people would rather not talk about. But whether we like it or not, suicide is a very real and very serious problem, one that can be prevented with compassion. So I put this picture of a quote by Nelson Mandela that says, "Compassion binds us to one another, not in pity or patronizingly, but as human beings who have learned how to turn our common suffering into hope for the future." And so I think this is a really beautiful quote that shows just the power of compassion. Okay. So before we start, let's do another short activity. So you can scan this QR code or use the link in the chat box, and in that link, you can tell me, you can say what is compassion or what does compassion mean to you. So when you think of compassion, what words come up? What are the things that you think about? Okay, so take your time, scan this QR code. You can put in as many responses as you want, though there is a character limit, if I'm not mistaken. And then we can look at the results together and see what everybody else says. Okay, so we can see that Everybody is starting to put in all their responses. Okay, so if you still haven't used the link, you can go to the link now and put in whatever you feel is compassion to you. I can see that we have 15 participants who are putting in their answers. For anybody else, feel free to come in and put in whatever your answers as well. Let's give a bit more time. Let everyone have space to think. Okay, so from the word cloud that we've created here from everybody's responses, I just want to say thank you all for your engagement and for participating. So let's look at what some of you have said. So I guess you can see from the center, the biggest ones are the ones that a lot of people have been saying, right? So we have love, kindness, understanding, sympathy. We have a lot, even like the smaller ones are also kasih sayang, listening attentively, being there for others, rahmah, help. These are all very beautiful meanings of compassion. And I'm so grateful that everybody has some sort of similar understanding, but also in a very unique way of looking at what compassion is to you. And all your meanings of compassion is truly so beautiful. And I thank you for sharing all of that with me. So how about we move back to our slides? Okay. All right. So now let's look at how psychologists would define what compassion is. So here in through research, it shows that compassion is defined as the feeling that arises when you are confronted with another person's suffering and you feel motivated to relieve that suffering. So you can think of compassion as having two parts. We have the showing sympathy part, which is a part that a lot of everyone talked about. So being kind, having empathy, being loving towards others, showing sympathy. So when somebody is going through something, going through pain or a difficult time, we feel for that person. We also feel hurt for that person as well. But another part of compassion is the willingness to help, or you see that suffering and you see that pain, and something inside you just wants to help that person to relieve their suffering. So this is the perspective of this is the definition of compassion according to psychologists, and I think it's so beautiful because it truly shows why compassion is so powerful. So when talking about compassion, it usually refers to showing sympathy and having the willingness to help others. And while that is a beautiful and wonderful thing to feel and have, it's also important to note that you can also be compassionate to yourself. So in this section, I also want to share about both self-compassion and also being compassionate to other people. So by instilling compassion for yourself and for others around you, it can really help in taking care of yourself, taking care of others, and hopefully in the prevention of suicide. Okay, so first, what is self-compassion? So there are three core components of self-compassion, which is self-kindness, recognition of common humanity, and mindfulness. So first, self-kindness is being understanding, being gentle to yourself instead of being overly critical, overly judgmental. So when you make a mistake or when something doesn't go your way, you are kind to yourself. You don't beat yourself up. You don't question your own self-worth. You are being kind to your own self. Next is the recognition of common humanity, which is feeling connected with others in the experience of life rather than feeling isolated or alienated by our suffering. So, what this means is that sometimes when we are going through something, when we are going through a difficult time or having problems, it's so easy to feel like we are the only person who is going through a difficult time or nobody else in the world understands us. But as we all know, every human being will have ups and downs in their life. They will have good times and they will have hard times. So recognition of common humanity is understanding that everyone suffers, everyone is suffering, everyone has gone through some sort of pain. And recognition of that gives a sense of togetherness, gives a sense of I am not alone in this. Somebody out there will understand me because all of us as humans will understand what it is like to not be okay. And lastly is mindfulness, which is holding our experiences in balanced awareness and acceptance instead of ignoring our pain or exaggerating our experiences. So, what this means is whenever something happens to us, we are mindful and we are aware and accepting of what happens to us instead of trying to avoid any negative feelings or trying to avoid that or trying to exaggerate those negative feelings into something worse. Being mindful is simply accepting that you are the way you are feeling and you are thinking the way that you are, and that you are present in your sensations. So, self compassion in general is just basically being kind and being considerate to yourself. And the way towards instilling self compassion in yourself is through self care. So, now this begs the question, what is self care? So, self care is taking steps towards tending your physical and emotional health needs to the best of your abilities. So, the World Health Organization, or the WHO, defines self care as the ability of individuals, families, communities to promote health, prevent disease, and maintain health, and to cope with illness and disability with or without the support of a healthcare provider. So, what this means is basically self care is everything related to taking care of yourself physically, whether that is through getting enough sleep, or hygiene, or nutrition, or seeking medical help if and whenever you need to. So that's taking care of your physical self and also your own mental well being, your own mental health. So, doing what you can to manage stressors in your life, taking care of your mental health and well being. So, now let's take a look at some of the different types of self care. So if you look online for types of self-care, you will see that there's a lot that comes out. Some places say there's 3 types, some people say there's 8 types. So after looking at all of that, I've decided to summarize it into 6 main categories of self-care. So the first category is physical self-care, which is taking care of your physical body. This includes eating healthy meals, getting exercise, getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, all of those things that makes you feel healthy. The next type of self-care is emotional self-care, which is taking care of your emotional health and having healthy coping strategies. So this can be cultivated using positive affirmations, telling yourself compliments or affirmations like I can do this, I am a worthful I am an I am full of love, giving positive affirmations to yourself. Next is stress management. So, like I mentioned before, being able to manage all the stresses in your life, that's a form of emotional self-care. And last is being kind to yourself, as I also had mentioned previously. Another type of self-care is mental or intellectual self-care, which is developing a healthy mindset through learning and through curiosity. So when you are engaging in mental self-care, this usually involves learning new things or piquing your curiosity, such as reading a book or learning new skills or engaging in your hobbies. So here are a few more types of self-care. So another one is spiritual self-care. So as you know, the human being is not just made up of the body and the mind, but we also have our soul. And so spiritual self-care is trying to take care of the soul within us. And for example, in Islam, we can take care of our soul using by doing the 5 daily prayers or reading the Quran, zikr, making lots of dua. So those are all the things that are nourishing our soul for this for our own spiritual self-care. Another thing that we can do is meditation, yoga, being in the present. And lastly is volunteering or giving charity. So not only is self-care directed to internally, but it can also be directed externally. So helping other people, helping those in need, volunteering, giving charity, that will give such a sense of peace to our soul and our spiritual self-care. Another type of self-care is environmental self-care, which is taking care of the space around you and being at one with your surroundings. So, for example, I would speak from personal experience, but if my workspace or my room is messy, then I would also feel cluttered and messy. And it would be very hard for me to get things done. But if I organize the space that I'm in, it also helps me organize my thoughts and helps me to work better and manage myself better. So it kind of shows the importance of environmental self-care in the sense where your surroundings do affect you. So organizing your room, cleaning your house and all is a form of self-care. Another way of doing environmental self-care is being at one with nature. So going for a walk or engaging in your five senses. So your touch, your taste, your smell, your hearing, your sight. So for example, putting on soothing music, lighting a scented candle, something that can soothe yourself through your five senses. And last is social self-care. So human beings are social beings, and so we need to stay connected to be healthy and build healthy relationships. So this can be cultivated through spending quality time with your loved ones and also having positive social media interaction. Now that we've talked about self-compassion and self-care, let's look into some of the ways to be compassionate towards other people, especially for those who are going through a difficult time or maybe even having suicidal thoughts or attempts. So how do we show our compassion towards them? So like I said before, compassion is like an equation involving two parts, showing sympathy and the willingness to help. So let's look at showing sympathy or showing empathy. So let's try putting our shoes into the shoes of someone who is going through a difficult time or having suicidal thoughts. What could they be thinking? What could they be feeling? They might be feeling very lonely and feeling like nobody understands them, or feeling like they cannot rely on anybody, or that they are a burden to their loved ones. And it might be really difficult to voice out their struggles. So what we can do is to recognize the warning signs that they might be showing. So as explained by our previous speaker, there were three main warning signs. So we need to be aware of those warning signs and not brush them off as a joke or as something silly, because it could be a very real call for help. After identifying the warning signs, what we can do is to ask and listen. So talking about suicidal thoughts or talking about suicide in general is very difficult. And so to do our part, we need to ask directly, sensitively, and respectfully, and engage in active and empathetic listening. So instead of saying, you have no reason to feel this way, or I know exactly what you're going through, or you are just being selfish, you are so lucky, other people have it worse, just be positive, don't be silly. All these things will make them feel as if they are not being heard, as if they shouldn't have talked about it in the first place because they were right, nobody understands them. So this is an example of dismissive listening. Instead, empathetic listening focuses on being there for them, validating their feelings, trying to understand why they are feeling this way, instead of dismissing it or providing an instant solution. So to understand more about empathetic listening, I've prepared a short video here. So we can watch this video together and see the example between dismissive listening and also empathetic listening.
No! Riley can't be done with me.
Hey, it's gonna be okay. We can fix this. We just need to get back to headquarters. Which way to the train station?
I had a whole trip planned for us.
Hey, who's ticklish, huh? Here comes the tickle monster. Hey, Bing Bong, look at this. Oh, here's a fun game. You point to the train station and we all go there. Won't that be fun? Come on, let's go to the train station.
I'm sorry they took your rocket. They took something that you loved. It's gone. Forever.
Sadness. Don't make him feel worse.
Sorry.
It's all I had left of Riley.
I bet you and Riley had great adventures.
Oh, they were wonderful. Once we flew back in time, we had breakfast twice that day.
Sadness.
It sounds amazing. I bet Riley liked it.
Oh, she did. We were best friends.
Yeah, it's sad.
I'm okay now. Come on. The train station is this way.
Okay, so this video is from the movie Inside Out, and we can see the difference in how the two characters try to make this purple elephant feel better. So the first person was trying to somewhat dismiss his feelings or look at the bright side, let's think of something else. But the other person sat there with them, asked about their feelings, talked to them, and was willing to listen. And in the end, the purple elephant got up and said he feels better. And then they got on their way again. So it's a very simple and very short video, but it just shows just how powerful empathetic listening is. So here's a simple picture to compare between empathetic listening and dismissive listening, which we also saw in the video previously. So dismissive listening was, like I had said previously, as in trying to give solutions or dismissing their feelings. Like, you don't need to feel upset, you'll be fine, or you could have had it worse. But instead, empathetic listening is being there to hear them. You are listening, you are validating their feelings, and you are there for them. So another way to help others and show compassion towards them is to help keep them safe, especially for those who are at higher risk of committing suicide, such as having active suicidal thoughts or having attempted before. So what we can do to keep them safe is to put time and distance between them and their chosen method. This includes keeping medication in safes, removing any sharp household items, or putting grills on the windows of tall buildings. So those are some ways that we can put time and distance. Another way is we can help them form an individual suicide safety plan. So this safety plan is to reduce any pain and increase coping resources when they are really at the peak of having suicidal thoughts. So for example, when they are feeling suicidal, they can follow this plan one step at a time until they feel safe. And so this plan, you can just keep it somewhere where they can easily find it, where they will begin. So here's an example of an individual suicide safety plan. So they will write their name on top, and then followed by what are some of the things that triggers their suicidal thoughts and feelings, or what are some of their warning signs, and what are the things that they can do to cope or to eliminate or minimize these triggers without like contacting other people. So something that they can do by themselves. If that doesn't work out, then they can put in My Angels, which is the names and the phone numbers of people that they can ask for help to help minimize their triggers. Someone that can talk to them, someone that can comfort them. Another thing they can do is to put in places or social settings that they feel comfortable in, that can eliminate their triggers or warning signs. And then they can also put in contact numbers of helpers or professional agencies, for example, like befrienders or mental health hotlines that they can immediately contact. And lastly, they can they can have a plan to keep their own space safe for them. So removing sharp objects or um, getting rid of any medications that could help make them want to commit suicide even more. So this is an example of an individual suicide safety plan. And as we are, well, like there's only so much that we can do to help others. But we can't control or we can't help with everything, especially during the height of crisis, especially during during very, very difficult times where they refuse to get help anywhere. What we can do to show our support is to contact any of these available hotlines, such as Befrienders, the Miyasa Helpline, Lifeline Association, or even call the emergency number at 999 or go to the emergency room of a hospital if you really think that you need help. And this is for on the spot crisis situations. And if you want to seek further mental health services, want to seek further professional help, here are some available mental health services here in Malaysia that you can look into. So we have Mentari Malaysia, we have some mental health centers such as Miyasa, Thrivewell, Relate. We even have university psychology services such as the PSU here at URA. But what's important to know is that you are not alone and that there are people who are out there willing to help you and willing to listen to you and help you get through whatever you're going through. So don't be afraid to reach out and seek help. So to summarize my part and also all the speakers before me, we can basically summarize the topic of suicide prevention with the acronym WAIT, so WAIT. So W is watch out for signs of distress, any warning signs, any changes in their behavior or the way they're talking or feeling. A is asking, so engaging in empathetic listening, asking them, are they having suicidal thoughts? And I, it will pass. So assuring your loved one that you are there for them, that you are willing to support them. And T is talking to others. So seek help or talk to your loved ones and don't wallow in don't stay in your thoughts and feelings for too long by yourself, because people out there are willing to listen and help you. And so with that, I hope that with compassion for yourself and for others, we will be able to help in the prevention of suicide, both in ourselves and also our loved ones. So now I will pass to the next moderator for the next section.
Thank you, Sophia, for the beautiful sharing. Now, we know the importance of compassion and how we can be compassionate to ourselves and to the others. We can see that it is really important for us to take care of ourselves and also each other to help prevent suicide. Now that we know that how to identify the warning signs and how we can support ourselves and others. So let's do a short activity together. So for this activity, it is a case study. Okay, you don't need to worry that it's not going to be really complicated. Each of us will assist you well in this activity. So I will read the case study first, and afterwards I will explain on the instruction. So Kim is a 28-year-old man who works as a manager in the finance department. Following his wife's death, he was diagnosed with major depressive disorder. Okay, he believed he is to blame for his wife passing. Life no longer held any value and purpose in his life. When he was distressed, he isolated himself from his friends and family. Kim frequently shares posts on social media, which give ambiguous messages about death. In addition, he suffered sleep problems, which severely impacted his work performance. He was ultimately had to take medicine to treat his insomnia, but he has attempted to consume more than the prescribed dosage. So, now I have read the case study on Mr. Kim. So let's move on to the next slides. Okay, here is the instruction. So after this, everyone will be divided into 3 groups in the breakup rooms automatically. So in each of the group, I would like to invite all of you to discuss on the case study among yourself and find out the following, which is the first one is the warning signs of Mr. Kim, and the second one is how would you help. But you don't need to worry on the previous case note. The previous case study. Um, each of the presenter will be present back in the breakout room of the case study just now. Okay. Now we will read for each of us. Will be divided into the breakout room.
So if we are his friends and family, okay, then I think probably the best way to help him would be to offer to listen empathically to his story, to be non-judgmental about his feelings, and then to be careful not to dismiss his not to dismiss his thoughts and feelings, and also as much as possible encourage him to get psychological treatment or grief counseling. I think it's that's not the same thing, kan? Grief counseling and yeah, not sure.
And I think for the isolation part, the fact that he isolated himself from his friends and family. So as a member of his family,
his wife death. Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay, is there anyone who like to add?
Can I try?
Yeah, sure.
I'm not a psychologist, but I will try.
Yeah, sure. Everyone can try.
Okay, so I noticed a couple of things. I'm so sorry, my neighbor is actually doing a renovation next door, so it's really noisy. But a couple of things that I noticed. First of all, self-blame.
Self-blame, okay.
It's obvious that the person feels like he is, like a burden. So that's a warning sign, I think. And then, of course, the feeling of, not worth living. That's pretty obvious.
Okay.
And he went into self-isolation, which was pointed out by Arina just now.
Yeah.
Arina. And self-harm. So that was obvious when he started overdosing on his medication. And all that eventually, of course, cost him an elevated stress. So you can see certain things that could lead to even more problems like lack of sleep,
Yeah.
and all that stuff. So yeah.
So, okay, there's a lot point here. So, anyone else would like to add more, or do you want to get back to the previous the story?
I think I can add one more.
Okay.
There's like this part in the case study where it says that Mr. Kim has been a few times giving ambiguous message about death on his social media. So I think that is like one of the warning sign as well. Maybe a cry for help too, because he's putting it on the social media, right? So.
Okay, that's good. Okay, now we have already 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Think, can you hear me?
Yes, sure.
Okay. So if I want to add, I think with diagnosed MDD, there is also insomnia, also insomnia, and like feeling isolated, like which led to
isolated.
Yes, feeling isolated. Also posting this messages in a like not directly, like somehow expressing out there, like in social media.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
you have given quite a few warning signs. Thank you so much, Miss. I can't see your name here, Miss
Sanjida. Yeah, you can.
Miss Sanjida. Thank you so much, Miss Sanjida, for your for contributing to the warning sign. So I open to other participants that may wanted to contribute in this warning signs.
I think one of the most biggest and clear warning sign is that he attempted to consume drugs or medicine more than the prescribed dosage, as mentioned in the last line of the case study. Yeah.
Consume drug more than prescribed dosage. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
So is there any other sign that you can see from the case study? Is there anything? Atau should we move into how to help Mr. Kim? So just to let you know, and most of these are correct because the warning signs can be changes in the sleeping pattern or personality pattern, and purposely isolate themselves from others are also warning signs of committing suicide, and also posting messages to others is a sign that they are thinking or having the ideation and intention to commit suicide. And also for the last point, which he attempted to consume drugs,
are both in the passage. So what specifically is the warning sign, and what looks like a warning sign but is actually a risk factor?
So would the risk factor be him having a diagnosis of major depressive disorder?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a risk factor.
Anything else that you can identify, whether it's warning signs or risk factors?
So would the self-isolation be both a warning sign and a risk factor?
I think it could be both, because it does make a person more likely and put them more at risk, but it could also be a sign as they don't want to be around people anymore and wanting to end their life, right? So social isolation could be both a warning sign and risk factor. Yeah.
Maybe starting to slowly go overdosing. It's almost like overdosing with sleep medication.
So that's like step by step, slowly increasing his own dosage until with the intention of one day just not waking up, right? So that is a warning sign as well. Okay, anything else, or should we move on to the how to help?
Yeah.
All right. So from your discussion, I heard a lot of different ways of how to help, and I'm very amazed at the ideas that you have shared. So maybe we can put this down on the slide as well.
So grief counseling for Mr. Kim?
Grief counseling.
Empathic listening.
Validate his emotions.
Just being present, I think.
So being there for him, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Linking him with
Provide solution, maybe they don't even have the capability to process it or accept it. So I guess it's just focus on listening and show that we are there to listen to whatever they are trying to say. I guess that is already so helpful.
Yeah, I also agree what you have been said, FM. It's we just need to we just need to listen and be there. We don't have to do anything, especially knowing that we listen to understand. We are not listening to answer what they are going to say to us. So just be there, sit with them, listening, and showing that we care about them a lot. Thank you. So anyone else would like to add some more on this?
Hello, can I add?
Yeah, sure.
First of all, very good points from the others about warning signs and how to help. As someone who knows this person personally, these are the things that we want to do, right? A little bit lah. Another thing is that knowing your limit or your boundary. So there are things that you probably cannot do. So you redirect them to the resources. So for example, if you feel like this person need to comply with their therapy, or like they need to seek professional help, like be there, validate them, but also redirect them to the resources that actually can do what is not within your capacity to do.
Yeah.
From all these things lah.
Yeah, I also agree with you. Thank you, Norain. It seems like some person who they don't really know how to help. Like don't know how to offer their, listening to them, because some of us being too busy with our routine. So, knowing our limits, and then we can also offer them the resources that are available for them to share about their problems or their suicidal thoughts towards the right resources. So, is there anyone else who would like to add more before we move on to the next slides?
I love all the points. And this is really funny, but most of the time, when people see another person in distress and they want to talk about things, they quickly jump to asking why, trying to coach or judge why, you're feeling like this because you're like this, or they're really quick to do that, and doesn't give the person enough time to reflect on their own in silence, or just to get them to think out loud what's in their minds. And that's really important. I don't know about others, but I think thinking out loud for yourself of the things that you're thinking, and then going through that process of just introspecting what's happening to you before you can move on. That's really important.
Yeah.
A lot of times people don't give us time to reflect on our thoughts. They would rather have us listen to them immediately or on the solutions, or the, like one of our friends here mentioned about, just jumping in with the solutions and stuff. Time is, it's really important for, people to process thoughts. And that could be different from person to person. Some people, within, a few minutes, they go like, oh yeah, I didn't see it that way. And some people take days, months, even years to realize, that something is going on, or that they're allowing themselves to go through a path that they shouldn't go through. And yeah, so it's really interesting to see. Just this conversation today is just really interesting. Just the points that everyone's brought in. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much too. Like, I love all your points. Knowing that it seems like you are putting yourself in the shoes of people who are having this condition, current conditions of suicidal thoughts, or this thing related to all this stuff. But it's really good knowing that you know what they are thinking, their current condition, and surely you can be a very good friends who can offer helps towards your friend who need help. Okay, so we are moving to I already prepared the answers. So some of it you already share with me just now, the warning signs and how to help. So I just read it back to you guys. So some of the warning signs is exclusion himself from families and friends, which is you guys already mentioned, on self-isolation.
Okay, or any other warning sign that you can see from this case study? Okay, if there is nothing else, maybe we can conclude. So what we've seen in the case study is one of the things that can happen to anyone, losing someone they love and having issues to cope with the with the grieving, and it might also impacting us in every other way in our life. So in every person that might be undergoing this same situation, we need to try to see what are the warning signs. So maybe if we see some warning sign that quite associated with suicide, maybe we will need to try to help him by listen to him, like what we have seen in the presentation slide. So rather than acting as if the suicide is a taboo thing that should not be discussed, try to be open with the concept of suicidal, and try to help him by maybe by all the suggestions listed here. Social support, get involved in activities so that they won't be alone, and do active listening or empathetic listening. So if you are a family members or a friend of those who are in need, try to accompany them in the time of dire, or try to communicate to them to seek for further help if they need it. And sharing some hotline or mental health services would also help them in seeing that there are other alternatives that they can try if they needed help. And basically to just ask in social medias if you are someone who are strangers to them, and to practice care and kindness in every other medium. And also if they are unable to work, ask for temporary leave might also help to reduce the stressor that might come from the external environment.
Reflections, then we will have a small activity just to share your reflections there, and we will have a short Q&A also at the end for any questions that you might be having. Okay. So okay, I guess then we'll just wait to return back to the main room then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia.
Well done. I like the slides, by the way. You guys' slides.
Yeah.
So pretty and simple.
Thank you.
And thank you, Sophia, for choosing this case. I think it's a very common kind of a situation where people tend to blame themselves when they're experiencing grief, actually. And that's something that not many people talk about. They talk about how to overcome grief, but not really the self-blame part. So that part is actually something very important that you pointed out here in this case.
Because grief is a very complex feeling. And we actually had a conversation yesterday, like between me and the three speakers, and we were talking about how if our significant other
Means it fights. So, what do you guys think about the presentation or sharing session just now on the, self-care, compassion?
The person to commit or to attempt suicide. So that is my reflection.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jamila. Okay, so thank you so much, Dr. Jamila. So yes, so what we wanted to do in our sharing session today is to promote or to allow a safe discussion regarding suicide, because it is a difficult topic to bring on in a normal conversation with others. But through this session, we would like for the people to be more comfortable with discussing these sensitive issues, because if not, the people who are struggling will become even more ashamed or embarrassed to talk about suicide. So thank you so much, Dr. Jamila, for a nice reflection. So we are about to be brought again to the main screen. So I think we see each other again in the main screen. Thank you so much for participation, and Assalamualaikum.
So thank you everyone for your participation. Now you already learned one of the example from Mr. Kim case study. So all of you guys are already able to identify the warning signs and how to help Mr. Kim. I really love how you guys share on your opinion and perspective on these suicide cases. So now I would like to open all of you to share what you gain, your reflection by scanning the QR code here. So feel free to share your thoughts and feelings regarding the session. So now we will read for some of you guys to write on your reflection for today. So once you're already able to enter the Mentimeter, you can share your thoughts or feelings about the decision of what you want to share, anything to us. So we can learn something with you guys. So some of you guys say that, thank you very much. I feel so good meeting new people today and engaging in deep and reflective discussion with them. It was a wonderful sharing session by the speakers, and thank you so much, IUM, for organizing this. And there's another person who said that, thanks for the wonderful session. I learned that the more I talk about suicide, the comfortable I am willing to reach out to others and help people around me who have suicidal thoughts or plan. Well, it feels good knowing that someone you guys finding that this sharing session is something that makes you feel comfortable to share and willing to reach out to other people. So now we will read to some of our friends to write on their reflections. You can take some of your time to write your reflection. So it is very insightful. Now I can recognize the warning signs and I'm now able to help others. Thank you to the speakers. I really hope we can do more of this topic. I really love this webinar. I'm suicidal and this gave me a depth understanding of what I've been feeling since. This person hang in there, you know, you are going to love yourself more after this. Make sure to practice self-care, and I'm glad that you love this webinar, that hopefully that this webinar able to give you some insight and a new perspective about yourself and the others. So, how to help depends very much on who we are in the context of the individual's life. Are we a friend, close relative, colleague, counselor, therapist, or a stranger passing close by them? Yeah, sure. Knowing that you know your role as friends or as family members, giving help to your the person who in need. We will wait for 1 more minute. For anyone of you who would like to share on your reflection for today. Okay. The person said that the webinar provided a lot of useful information to increase our awareness of suicide signs of prevention methods. I enjoy all the activities, school group discussion towards the end, with hands-on brainstorming on the relevant issue. Thanks. Yeah, thank you too to these persons. I'm so glad and appreciate that you enjoy this sharing session. So now we're back to the next agenda, which is the question and answer. So for the question and answer, anyone who like to ask, feel free to ask anything in the chat box below, and or you can scan the QR code here.
Thank you so much, Naziha, for concluding the reflection side. So let's see here. Let's wait for a moment. So I hope from the activity that we have done before, it can further increasing your understanding on the topic of suicide prevention. So before we end today's session, I would like to open the floor for Q&A session. I invite participants, if you have any question that you would like to ask regarding our today's topic on suicide prevention, instilling compassion, and how you can help. So I invite everyone to ask a question. You can either unmute yourself to ask a question, or you can give your question in the chat box, or if you want it to be anonymous, you can scan the QR code or copy the link given in the chat box. So I invite anyone with a question. You can try to unmute yourself if you wanted to ask a question as well. Sorry, I unmute myself. Okay, so I have a question. May I know if the risk of thinking or attempting suicide is hereditary? So thank you so much for the question. So I invite for any of the presenter if you would like to answer this question first.
Can I answer it?
Yes, sure, Najiha.
Okay, thank you to the person who asked this question. It is indeed a very good question. I guess like some of us already have wondering the same question also. And actually, suicidal behavior is not genetically inherited, but it is more to the socially learned from the significant others or family members or friends who committed suicide. Okay, why I say so? Because you can see that it is not genetically inherited, which is passing from one generation to the other generation. But in this context, if the person who wanted to commit suicide because there are a case, for example, there are a case that a person who committed suicide due to the one of the family members already also committed suicide, it might due to it might because of they also affected by the the death of the family members, and which might makes him or her to fall into depression and having their suicidal thoughts, and lastly, committing suicide. Actually, in a simpler way, suicide is not inherited and it is not contagious to the others.
Thank you so much, Najiha, for a concise answer. So the answer would be no for this question, and it is not one of the genetically built for this thinking or attempting suicide. So I invite any other question that you would like to ask to the regarding this topic. We have next question here. So how do I help a friend who mentioned that she has too much work and she feels like giving up on life? May you share with me what I can say to her to validate her feelings? Thank you so much for this person to ask this question on behalf of your friend. So I invite any other speaker that would like to answer this question as well.
Okay, maybe I can try answering this question.
Yes, sure, Sophia.
So first of all, thank you so much for asking your question. It's really beautiful that you are concerned for your friend and that you are aware that she is going through a difficult time and that you want to help her. So that shows a lot of compassion on your part. So what can you say to validate her feelings? So usually when we are in the process of empathetic listening, our role is more to listen to them. And so part of validating her feelings, a big part of it is actually being present and listening to what she has to say. So whenever she is sharing your feelings with her, you are giving her your full attention. You are really trying to understand where she is coming from, and you are acknowledging that what she is feeling. So you can say, I understand you are feeling sad. I see that you are feeling stressed out. How can I help you? How do you want me to help you with your feelings? So you are showing your willingness to help, and you are understanding her feelings. So that's, I guess, a small way of showing how to validate her feelings. And I hope I answered your question. Do any of the other speakers want to add on to this question?
Yes, thank you so much, Sophia, for the answers. And yes, so a simple act that we might think that it is just a simple word or things that we do, but it may contribute or it may be a very significant thing to the person who are in need of help. So thank you so much for the answers and thank you so much for asking this question. So is there any other question before we conclude the session for today? Okay, so for the next question, so how do I know if it's really suicidal or I'm just tired with daily issue? Okay, so thank you so much for the question. So maybe I can try to answer it first. So how do I know if I'm really suicidal or I'm just tired with daily issues? So first of all, I hope you are doing okay now. And there is quite a difference between being suicidal or just tired with the daily issues. So with being tired with if you are being tired with daily issues, you can have rest or you can have a restful rest in order to get back to your momentum before you deal with your daily issues again. But if you are really suicidal, you don't even really can't rest. You might have issues in sleeping, you might issues in eating, and you might have any other issues that might prevent you to further rest. And therefore, all you think is you wanted to commit suicide. So there is quite a difference between being tired and being suicidal. So I hope with this simple question can answer your questions yourself. Is there any other speaker that would like to maybe add more on this point?
Maybe I can add just a little bit. So
Sure.
This is a really good question and something that I think many people would try to wonder. So the main thing about being suicidal or going thinking of suicide is usually suicide is thought of as a problem solver, as a solution to a problem, so or an escape to your struggles in life. So usually that's where the border, in my opinion, would lie. So being tired with daily issues is you're having so many things that are stressing you out in your daily life, but you still can somehow find a way to get through them. There's still reasons for you to wake up in the morning and get through the day. But when you're suicidal, it becomes a lot darker, and you can't really see like light anymore. Like you just think that ending your life is the only way to go. So I hope that that answers your questions, and I hope that whatever you are going through, you do find your way out of it, because I hope from our presentation today that it can be seen that suicide is really not the answer. Okay.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sophia. So due to the time limitation, maybe we can only have one more question before we conclude the session. Maybe just one more question. Okay. So the next person asked, the thought of can I survive for another day start popping out of my head since yesterday. Is there anything I can do to distract myself from having this thought? So thank you so much for this person to ask this question. So I invite any of the speakers to maybe give a short answers on this issue that can like concisely answer the question. Thank you so much. Any other speaker? Okay, any other? Sophia, you can try or?
Okay, so I will try to my best to answer this question. So thank you for sharing and for asking this question. And it really takes a lot of courage to be able to admit to yourself that you are thinking this way. The fact that you are asking yourself, can I survive for another day, is your body and mind kind of sending a signal that you want to survive for another day, like you want to keep on living, but everything in your life is really it's so overwhelming, and you're really struggling through everything that it comes in the form of these thoughts of doubting if you can survive another day. But the fact that you have been thinking about this, so to distract yourself from this thought, what I would suggest is actually not to distract yourself from this thought, but instead being mindful and being accepting of that thought. So for example, in self-compassion, so the aspect is mindfulness, right? So you are aware of that you are having that thought, and you accept that you are having that thought, and it will eventually remove any negative feelings of denial or avoiding that thought, because that thought seems automatic and seems like something that you can't control. But what you can control is what you think of afterwards, or how you act afterwards. So I hope that it gets better for you, and that you practice a lot of self-care and self-compassion, that you will somehow one day stop thinking this way and start and be a bit more okay. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you so much, Sophia, for a beautiful answer. So to distract yourself sometimes is not the solution that we seek from, but to try accept yourself from what you are feeling. Try to accept your feeling as what it is, and try to help yourself from there on. So thank you so much, Sophia. Due to the time limitation, so we could not answer any more questions. But if you have any other question, you can try to channel it through our PSU, our Psychology Services Unit. Maybe we can try to adjust from there on. So as a concluding note, we have shared and discussed a lot of topic today. We have discussed what really a suicide is, and some of the warning sign, risk factor, and protective factor that may protect a person from committing suicide. And from there, we can adopt our knowledge that we learned today to recognize those who might be struggling and need our help. And we can also develop and instill compassion to create a safe space for the community to seek help. Practicing self-care also may help an individual to help taking care of themselves and further reduce the ideation or intention into thinking that suicide is the solution to the issues. And other than that, practice empathy and really listen to others can give a lot of comfort and may help them to when they undergo like a difficult situation. So on the ending note, people who may wanted to commit suicide may not always wanting to die, but rather wanting to end the pain that they are living within themselves. And rather than wanting to die, they actually may hope to be helped as well. So with that, let's try to practice kindness and compassion to others and try to be kind not only to others, but the most important thing is to be kind to yourself. And on behalf of our teammate and our psychology services unit, I would like to thank all of you for your active participation throughout the sharing session, and I hope all of us to have a good day ahead. And Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. This has been really, really very interesting sharing. So thank you so much.
Thank you as well.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
Assalamualaikum.
very, very useful.
Thank you, everyone.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
Congratulations, guys. Wait, you forgot to take photos. For those of you staying behind, you forgot to take photos.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Okay.
I was taking photos as well, but I think we should have group photos, okay?
Okay.
Okay. Let me take it for you. So,
Thank you,
all
Dr.
right, okay. And so for those of you still here, you can turn on your cameras. Okay, just gonna. All right, okay. 1, 2, 3, smile. Another one. 1, 2, 3, smile. Wait, hold on. Sorry. Okay, 1, 2, 3, smile. All right, okay.